down, and we see that as a great, great opportunity. People can get literally up close and personal. We have a Draker system, the Centalis system, that collects all kinds of data. We share data with the local high schools and colleges. These panels are on a bunch of different inverters, so we can do some experiments and help people get hands-on and learn. The inverter building is open when we're there, not when it's self-toured. But the inverter building is an off-grid example as well. In addition to all the inverters for the grid-connected 50 kW, there's a solar array that manages the internet system and the lighting in that building. We do talk about our cow power. You can see methane generation doesn't exactly relate to the inverter building there, but we do have a chance to talk about that. We can't, never mind. That was just a quick picture, or a quick video of a time lapse of another project that we built, a brownfield development. We have a brownfield that literally was being unused, and we've heard speakers talk about the opportunity of landfills. This was built, it was a time lapse, 200 kW. And we're in the process of doing that in Rutland, 150 kW, on what was a coal gasification plant from the early 1900s for city lighting in Rutland City. This is the 200 kW array up in Barre, Vermont, very close to Montpelier. This is at Shelburne Farms. A lot of tourists head to Shelburne Farms in Vermont. There's their famous inn all the way at the top there, looking out over beautiful Lake Champlain. This is on one of the paths. People can go take a look at it. And that's it.
Thank you, Dave. Next we have Elizabeth Kennedy from the Mass Clean Energy Center. That hybrid coat, don't spill.
Great, thank you. I spoke yesterday, so I won't do a lot of background about the Clean Energy Center, but we're quasi-public in the state of Massachusetts, and we're working to accelerate the clean tech industry in the state. Part of that is obviously focused on solar. And one of the things that we do is education, and I will be the first to admit that Massachusetts does not yet have sort of a comprehensive education and outreach plan right now, and that's something that we're working with the Department of Energy Resources to try and develop, because I feel like probably similarly to other states, it's still a little bit piecemeal. So from our perspective, we really sort of focus on three general areas. The general public in doing public speaking, also just trying to develop materials to help people. We have a sort of residential solar guidebook on our website, really just to answer some of the common questions that homeowners have. I'll talk about the Solarize program in more detail in a minute, but that's just sort of our general outreach is sort of whenever we have an opportunity, we will try and do public outreach. We do a lot of technical education and outreach, and that's focused on the community colleges and tech schools doing education for people who will be entering the workforce. We've sort of shifted gears a little bit and started doing technical education for installers, so working with some of the trade associations like NSE and CBAE, the Solar Energy Business Association of New England, going to do trainings that will help provide information on complying with codes, things like that. We've recently, I mentioned yesterday that some of our sort of newer stakeholders have been first responders. We've had a lot of interest from first responders in Massachusetts where, there's a fire and they go to a site. They don't even know what buildings in Massachusetts have solar on them. Nevertheless, how to handle a situation if there is solar. And so really educating them on how these systems work, what to do in an event that there is a fire. And even more recently, I honestly hadn't even thought about this until I had a conversation with this man. There has been interest in working with investigators that will go to a building after a fire has taken place because they need to determine what the cause is. And this gentleman was saying to me, we don't know how these systems work well enough to be able to determine was this solar related or not. And what we don't want to be sort of misdiagnosing issues, which is going to solar industry. And so we're starting to sort of engage in that as well, so people are a little more informed. And then finally, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but working with the financial industry. And so we've been doing trainings. You know, there are a lot of big financial institutions that are looking to invest in sort of large megawatt scale projects in Massachusetts, but where we're lacking is sort of local bank involvement, and you know, they don't understand the technology generally, and they really don't understand how the incentives work. And so we've been doing seminars to help educate the financial institutions. And I was talking to David yesterday about this. I mean, I don't mean to be cute when I say the presentations that we use for both the financial institutions and the general public, we use slides that my colleague put together to give a presentation to his son's 4th grade class. I mean, that is sort of the energy education level that most people who don't live and breathe this every day are at. So I also want to talk a little bit about the Solarize Massachusetts program that we're doing. We ran a pilot last summer in 4 communities, and this summer we're in 17 communities. A few of them have partnered together, so it's sort of, you'll see 13 little stars on the map. But the idea behind the program was sort of 3 things. If we could go into a community and educate the residents and business owners on the technology, here's how it works, here are the incentives, this is what the process looks like. And then as a result of that, sort of aggregate a group of people that were interested, would that remove the marketing and or at least reduce the marketing and acquisition costs for an installer that was working in that community? And it does significantly. And as a result of this, we see anywhere from sort of 8 to 30% decreases in the cost of solar for those customers. And the idea is, as more people sign up under the program, which will be sort of a 4-month sign-up period, the price goes down for everyone. So there's this incentive to sort of spread the word and talk about the technology. So we're in the middle of the program right now, so I don't have a ton of numbers for you, but what I can say is, of those 17 communities, one of them is the city of Boston, so they're really throwing our numbers off. But so the total population is technically 1.2 million, of which 600,000 is Boston. And so far, we're sort of halfway through the program. We have 3,000 people in those communities that have said, hey, yes, I'm interested in solar and sign me up for a preliminary site assessment. And that's a huge number relative to what we see sort of outside the program. We see on a quarterly basis about 700 projects that come through our traditional rebate program, but they are geographically dispersed throughout the state. So these are 3,000 people in very concentrated areas. Currently, under this program, of those 3,000 sites, only about 1,000 of them or 900 of them have been deemed feasible for solar. A lot of them end up falling out. And that in and of itself is an education process, explaining to people why, you know, they're really engaged, why they may not be able to move forward. And so far, about 10% of those sites have contracted so far. And what we're finding is you can educate people about solar, but then getting them to actually act is a completely separate issue. And so the way this program is structured is that people have until September 30th to actually sign a contract. And so what we saw under the pilot last year was 2 or 3 weeks before the deadline, all of a sudden there was a huge spike. So that's what we're anticipating again this year. But it's a really interesting model. What we're doing is we're going into these communities, we're doing what we call Solar 101s, where it's just us, the Clean Energy Center. We're going to present sort of an objective view on solar. We're not trying to sort of force anything on them. And then once an installer is selected, we'll go in and do a Solar 201, where we sort of refresh their memory on how the technology works and then introduce the installer. And I could tell you, of all of the public meetings I've done, I probably get the same 20 questions every time. You know, people just want to know, what is this going to do to my roof? What happens when it snows? You know, what happens at the end of my lease or PPA contract? So there really is a finite number of questions out there that if we can just figure out a way to communicate that to them easily, we would sort of solve a lot of the problems. But I would say one of the biggest pieces of feedback I've gotten from people is, this is great. I've seen solar, and I considered it 5 years ago, and that's when paybacks were 12 to 15 years. And I didn't even think solar was affordable, and it made me realize, again, like I live and breathe this every day. I know what's going on in the market. I know how the incentives work, but the average homeowner doesn't, and they're not tracking legislation, and they're not tracking the industry. And so for them to find out that in Massachusetts we're seeing paybacks in the 5-year time range for residential solar was mind-boggling. And they just didn't know that. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done, but we should be able to accomplish a significant uptick in adoption if we just sort of get out there and spread the word. So thank you.